The best way to predict the future is to create it. So ask yourself at the end of every day, did my decisions today power the transition to a drastically different and better future? Or will they prolong the status quo?
Hi all, and welcome to Sustainable Pathways Calling the Collective. Today I am joined by Minou Schillings, who is a regenerative business facilitator, public speaker, and transformation guide. Minou is a guiding force behind the Green Sprint, where she helps clients unlearn, imagine, explore, realize, and embrace the regenerative mindset and future-proof their businesses. Today, we are truly going to leave behind the business as usual mindset and talk about what regeneration is, how it is different than sustainability, and what steps businesses need to take to become a regenerative business. Before jumping into the podcast, let's have a 1-minute preview of her work. All right, so Minou has 3 really great solutions for you on sustainable pathways. The first is the Better Future Guide, which is a toolkit that will help you explore the transformation to a regenerative, just, and resilient future at your own pace. You will learn how to navigate the regenerative business space, unlearn and learn at your own pace, and tackle overwhelm. Her second solution is a great one-to-one for businesses that want to become a B Corp. You will learn how to align on your purpose to start your journey to become a B Corp. She will also help you with the baseline analysis, where you will scan your company on the 5 operational areas and identify specific potential impact business models. And she will also work with you to identify which areas require actions and where you can find low-hanging fruits. If you're interested in learning more about regeneration, then Minou's workshop on Regeneration 101, Shaping the Future of Business, is the right workshop for you. You will learn what regeneration is, why it's vital for humanity and for businesses to survive and thrive. You will understand how regeneration is different from, goes beyond sustainability, and it will also help you have a clear idea of the mental paradigm shift that's needed to realize a regenerative and just future. If this is what you're looking for your business, look no further than Minou Solutions. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. Thank you, Minou.
Perfect. Let's get started then. Thank you so much for joining us, Minou. Do you mind providing everyone with a small introduction about yourself?
No, of course. Let's dive straight into it. I'm Minou Schillings. I'm a part of Sustainable Pathways, and I'm a regenerative business facilitator when I'm working, and a lot of other things when I'm not. And I help businesses and individuals to develop a mindset, a leadership style, and a set of capabilities that will actually empower them to lead and drive the regenerative transformation to a better world. And I'm sure we'll dive into what regeneration is in a second.
Exactly. Why don't we make that our first question then? So, what is regeneration? How is it different from sustainability? And what do we need to move to really get us to a regeneration?
First question, big one. I'll try to keep it short because, first of all, there is no widely agreed, clear definition of regeneration. It really depends on who you ask and which industry they come from. But what I like to stick with is that regeneration is a way of thinking, being, and acting that puts life at the core of everything you do. So you always strive for thrivability. And thrivability not only for yourself, not only for human beings, but for all forms of nature, living now and living in the future. And it is extremely different from sustainability in almost any way. Sustainability, in a very simple way, just means the ability to sustain or the ability to hold up something for a longer period of time. But as we all know and feel and see around us, is that currently all systems seem to be in stress and broken. We have a 69% decrease in biodiversity over the last 5 decades. 1 in 4 people is suffering mental health problems. We have, I think, 400 dead zones in the oceans. it's estimated that we have around 60 harvests left, and then we depleted the soil, and this list can go on. So it's clear that there is stress ecologically, economically, and on a societal level, and also mentally. So there's something that is clearly going very, very wrong at a very deep level. And then I wonder, why would we want to uphold that and prolong that? Isn't it the case that we have done so much damage and we hollowed out our ecological and societal systems to such an extent that now we have to allow them to heal and enable them to heal and once again thrive? And sustainability, in my opinion, doesn't motivate or inspire us to do that, where regeneration really aims to thriving and healing and exploring all the different ways that we can create systems that are once again flourishing and healthy, where sustainability is often very technical. It becomes a bit technocratic in many ways, like just carbon tunnel visions, carbon emission goals, all of these things. But it's not enough. It's not inspiring. It's not fun. I think regeneration goes way beyond that. And then what do we need to move for regeneration? Everything. Basically everything. We as human beings, we have been living on this planet for a really, really, really long time. And most of that time we lived in sync with nature, in balance. We respected nature. We took, but we also gave back. And we lived in harmony with other forms of nature. And also in a way that was better for our own mental health. But then over the last 400 to 250 years, we started focusing on capitalism and then growth-oriented capitalism. And then you threw in internet and social media and all of these things in the mix. And all of these mechanisms moved us further and further away from living in a way that works, that makes sense, that is regenerative, that promises or even allows future generations of nature and human beings to thrive. So all of these moving parts, most of them are parts that we need to unlearn, mechanisms that we need to unlearn. And then partly we need to explore how, in combination with technology, because technology does have great potential, we can create a society that thrives. And which parts do we need to let go? Which dreams and hopes do we need to let go? And were they even helping us in any way? Or are they just smokes and mirrors? Actually, sort of keeping us from well-being because we're focusing on materialistic goods. So it is on every level. It's a mindset level. It is the businesses, how we run the businesses, the organization culture, leadership style, but it's also how we collaborate, how we work together, our politics, our economic system, you name it. And it can be redesigned and explored to see how we can do it in a regenerative way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great response, because I always have that graph in my head, and maybe I'll try to put it here for whoever's watching, where you can kind of see the difference that we're talking about, the difference between sustainability and regeneration. And it took a while for people to really understand sustainability. And maybe for my follow-up question, how can a business be seen as a regenerative business in comparison to a sustainable business, when even being a sustainable business is still something that people don't 100% understand, or they are not all running to maybe get there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've worked for what, 5, 6 decades, maybe even more, to get sustainability on the table, and now it's finally there. We're like, no, wait, we have to become regenerative. I can imagine that is a bit much, and also that's why I don't think there is something like a sustainable or a regenerative business. Definitely not a regenerative business yet, but there are a lot of businesses that are led in a regenerative way by people that choose nature and life and thriving and well-being as their decision-making compass. Like real regenerative businesses only will start arising when there are ecosystems wide enough for them to plug in and collaborate with. And right now, like, it's a classic example, but let's go with Patagonia. Like, Patagonia is one of these businesses that is always mentioned as the big frontrunner, the big pioneer. Like, but even they're not getting it 100% right, of course. Like, lots of their clothes are still made on polyester and PET. And if you look into those life cycle analysis, you can't really call that regenerative or natural. But they are putting regeneration at the core of their business, and they're constantly looking for ways to do it better and to enable thriving. And I think that is what matters most, not doing it perfect on paper, but to actually adopt a different lens that drives your decisions. And I think there it becomes really, really different, and it moves from having a sustainability manager within your business that pushes the sustainability metrics like carbon, and transitioning to a executive team that actually takes regenerative leadership very serious, to HR and marketing and the executive team and all management collaboratively aligning on regeneration, to having a company-wide understanding of what that means, and also focusing on inner personal and outer like business development. And then step by step you become more and more regenerative. So it isn't about what the business does on paper, even though that it is very, very important. I think in the essence it's how it's being led and what it's striving to do. Of course, then I don't mean striving to do something, shouting out a purpose, like coming to mind, for example, Unilever talking a lot about regeneration, but then are you for real? That's a different kind of case. That's greenwashing, basically, shouting something but not doing it. But it's about leading in a way and not per se pushing for certain metrics, because that once again also goes back to it becomes mechanistic and immediately hollowed out. If you only focus on next year's sustainability metrics, it is really hard to focus on regenerative leadership. It needs to go hand in hand, because otherwise you'll run into a wall.
Yeah, I think long-term thinking is everything, and that's the hardest thing about being a business in today's age, is being able to think about what the world will be like in 20 years, in 100 years, and thinking about your company in that perspective. And maybe as people are starting to learn about regeneration in the same way they maybe had to learn about different other areas and topics, what are the most important concepts that are surging from the regeneration movement that most people don't know or maybe don't live by, either in a personal or a business sense as well?
I think one of the best ones is what you just mentioned, and it's this long-term thinking. Long-term thinking, or how you want to call it, multi-generational thinking. I like to call it acorn thinking. Like, you put an acorn in the ground knowing that you'll never sit in the shade of a tree. Or as a society, you start building a cathedral knowing it will take 500 years. You'll never pray in that cathedral, but you're working on it. And our cathedral could be Gaia, could be Mother Earth, and then we could collectively, in a sort of multi-generation project, decide that we're going to determine our lives to the well-being of Mother Earth. But I think this long-term thinking is made extremely hard in today's society. Lots of different reasons, but growth-oriented capitalism, quarterly goals, an individualistic mindset, pressure to perform, pressure to be different or better, comparing ourselves, social media, all of these elements constantly sort of push us into focusing on vanity metrics, short-term metrics, tangible financial metrics, and not on the long-term thrivability of our society and our planet. And that is extremely hard. And therefore, it isn't as easy as just switching from short-term thinking to long-term thinking. That already requires a lot of unlearning, and it actually ties into everything else. It also ties into, like, business as usual is about apathy. Then sustainability may be about empathy. But for me, regeneration is about compassion. And I don't know who asked me this, but it was a beautiful question. He said, what if you're on a hike and you're carrying a glass bottle and you drop it and it shatters all over the path? Would you clean it up knowing someone will be walking that path tomorrow? Probably, because you don't want someone to step into it and hurt themselves. Would you be cleaning it up if you knew there wasn't anybody walking that path for the next 100 years? But then someone would show up and walk over it. Does that pain and hurt that is the consequence of your action, does that matter less because it's 100 years later? I don't think so. I think you still have to clean it up. But right now we're acting as if it only matters if someone walks through it tomorrow, and it doesn't if someone walks through it in 100 days. So then compassion ties in there, because we have to expand our compassionate thinking. And there are so many of these elements, like we can keep talking about this for a very long time. It's like, for example, having the courage to lead businesses and societies in a living systems way, actually to accept that they are living systems and that there is emergence going on and that you can't control everything, meaning that we have to move away from this mechanistic, like we can control everything and we're the boss of everything and there's a clear structure. That one is vital to change, but also very hard, and it again ties into long-term thinking, because it's a lot easier to accept something, your business or a society acts like a living system, if you're focusing on the long term. But if you're focusing on the short term, you want to control it. Therefore, for example, I also know that the world that I want to see isn't going to be around when I die. I'm pretty sure we haven't realized it by then. Like, the transformations are too huge. Does that matter? Does that mean that I won't continue trying to enable people and businesses to thrive? No. Does it mean that I stopped trying to control it and like push businesses to implement sustainability and regeneration practices tomorrow? No, because I know if I do that, like, I'll end up in a burnout within a year, because it's impossible. It's also highly unrealistic. And you do see it in the name of my business. Like 3.5 years ago, I called it the Green Sprint. Clearly a call for urgent action, clearly a call for speed. But the sprint in itself is also a quite mechanistic approach to innovation. If for who's listening, you don't know what it is, the design sprint is a guided innovation process designed by Google Ventures. And it comes from the software world, but it is very, very suitable as well for quickly developing and testing sustainable solutions. But that doesn't work if you haven't addressed your mindset first, because then you'll just end up with things that are a little bit better or a little bit less bad, or just complete greenwashing, don't move the needle, all of these things. So I also had to accept, okay, I can't push businesses to help them in like developing sustainable solutions fast, because then we're stuck within the old paradigm. I have to accept that the best way to speed up is slowing down, that I can't control it, and that I need to make a lot of effort in grieving about this, and also grieving about the earth and about what we're doing to each other and to our future. And from that place, of no like toxic desire for speed, then I can help businesses with a regenerative mindset. But otherwise, you're stuck. So I think in many ways, almost all principles sort of regeneration loop back into either long-term thinking or compassion. Yeah. I'll stop there because I can talk about this for a very long time.
No, that was great, and I think it's very interesting that you brought up the topic about grief, because I've been recently working with an NGO, and we've been talking about how can we deal with our feelings, and then from there kind of create solutions and put in different activities as well. And maybe that would be a really good transition into the next question is from this knowing that you can't change a system, from this notion that you still need to do something. What are the key areas that you are working on when it comes to driving regeneration? And what do these services and what does your work look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm still trying to figure that out as well. It changed a couple of times over the last couple of years. So when I started the Green Sprint, I was focused on like I said, innovation for sustainability, innovation for social change within the consumer goods sector, helping teams to develop more sustainable products, services, redesign their strategy and all. But then I ran into this what I call the garbage in, garbage out problem, not tackling the mindset, but focusing on like starting to act first. And I realized this doesn't work any longer. And I actually have a background in the development of thinking, I have a master's in creativity and innovation from the Edward de Bono Institute. And Edward de Bono also really said a genius thing. He said, if you never change your mind, why have one? I was like, yeah, okay, that's where we need to go. So I focus strongly on leadership development and then mostly on mindset. And then building the capabilities. And with capabilities, I don't mean knowing how Excel works or knowing about growth marketing, but I mean capability to think long term, to be compassionate, to be courageous, to be curious, to be imaginative, and all of these things, to embrace uncertainty. So that is what I work with leadership teams, and of course, also just teams within organizations, because only top down doesn't work. It needs to come from all directions. And I do this mostly in 4 phases that I always stick to. First, focusing on unlearning. So unlearning business as usual, opening pathways to think in a different way, tackling your barriers to change, unlearning all of the assumptions and the beliefs and the thoughts that are framing your thinking to the paradigm that we're living in right now. And everyone has lots of unlearning to do. If you're working in a business for 3 years or for 25 years, we all have a lot of uncovering and unlearning to do there. And then the second phase is unleashing your imagination. And that is what I love most, helping people to, in Rob Hopkins' words, move from what is to what if. Because we are in many ways living in an era where we are not only in a climate crisis, we're actually in a crisis of imagination. So many people just fail to be able to think in different possibilities, to imagine alternative futures. And you can't blame them because they're being bombarded with social media noise, with expectations by society, with an educational system that crushes any form of imagination, with like career expectations that only focus on one goal, with like all of these things that constantly just limit us from stepping out of that rat race and actually focusing on, okay, it doesn't have to be this way. But we don't have the time to do that because we're so busy with being in the rat race and with sustaining all our materialistic needs. There we're stuck. So to be able to unleash your imagination, a lot of unlearning needs to be done. Once you've unlearned, once you've unleashed your imagination, then you can start talking about realizing regenerative transformations, both inner, so inner development, and outer, business development, organization culture, and all of that. And all my services, my workshops, my facilitation, but also the newsletter I write or the retreat that I host, are all around these three phases. And the goal is to help people lead this regenerative transition. Because I'm not a leader in a business, I'm not a leader of a government, but I can help those people to power the transition. Because if we expect them to do it on their own, that's impossible. We can't ask that from people. We cannot ask leaders who are so overworked or burned out that they sometimes lose the possibility to dream, to step out of the day-to-day grind, to then go on a very, very long self-guided personal development where exploration where they have to figure out everything by themselves. No, we clearly need to help them. So that's what I do, and that's what the key areas that I work on look like.
That's super interesting, and I love your perspective of kind of coming from the inside out, because I also like to think that if you can't really change somebody else's garden if you haven't figured out what your own garden looks like. Could you give some examples of work that you have done with a couple of businesses so maybe people can have a better idea of what that would look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there can be different ways. It depends on how ready a business is, how ready a leadership team is. What I've noticed so far is that right now it is a lot about awareness and education. So I think many people, we all notice that many people know that the system is broke, that something needs to change, but they don't know where or how to get started. And also for sustainability managers, it is often a challenge to actually motivate the rest of the company to start taking action, to create awareness around this topic, to explain what is actually going on. And if it's already hard for sustainability, you can imagine how hard it is for regeneration. So part of the work that I do is public speaking and talks around regeneration. And then mostly someone the other day really described my talk in a beautiful way. She said it's a shot of endorphin. Yeah, like positive emotions for a better future. I won't come and just bore you with like a bunch of frameworks. No, we'll first work on the inspirational part and actually getting people excited about it. And then the next work is around workshops that actually help people to unlearn, help people to get unstuck in certain cases, help people to move one sustainability challenge and reimagine it, how that could be a regeneration challenge. It can be around unleashing your imagination and therefore opening up your potential for disruptive change. So this is more about workshops with teams, and often teams within the consumer goods industry, and then primarily within Europe, because I want to work with the overdeveloped countries, because the overdeveloped countries are the countries that need to change the most and the fastest, and also, in my opinion, have the biggest responsibility to do so. I think that's where we really can make big progress, and really big progress is needed. So that is part of it. Then it can be very specific challenges. With, for example, recently, last year I worked with a fintech company with the IT team, and then we explored how they could enable their 10,000 employees to work in a more sustainable way. So this is not about regeneration yet, but it moves slowly in the direction of actually influencing each other and their wider ecosystem to change their behavior. So that was quite an interesting one as well. For example, I'm working with B Lab to inject lots of knowledge and inspiration around regenerative businesses into the B Corp and the B Leader network. Exploring with business or with educational platform and founder mentoring platform Wonder how we can make regenerative leadership accessible, understandable, and actionable. And yeah, it goes in all of these directions. And my biggest one, but I think will maybe ask me a question about that because it's the thing that I talk about all the time, is of course that I'm working with Jamie Proud from Make Honey on Retreat, which will be a 5-day regenerative retreat on the Camino de Santiago. And it is designed to help people to rewild, unwind, and unlearn. And the whole purpose actually is to help to combine a retreat with an opportunity to inject regenerative leadership and the excitement around regenerative leadership into impact-oriented business leaders who are often stuck in the day-to-day grind. And we've noticed it as well when we are working with them and when you work in workshops around regeneration, is that it's really hard to break free from how everything is done right now and from the constant stream of Slack channels and buzz, like email buzzes and like meetings and all of that. Like, okay, that doesn't work. And from my own experience, I know the Camino is the best modern life bullshit antidote ever. It really can help you to put things in perspective, to take a break, to put the distance between you and your work. And that is exactly the kind of environment that we need to then start talking about the regenerative mindset and explore what it could actually mean for yourself and for your business. That's why I'm super excited to take a bunch of people there.
Well, that's great. You jumped in my second question there, because I've seen all of the work. Well, you being on it is already super inspirational, and then seeing you taking other people through it, I think I love the it takes away all the bullshit and everything that you kind of think just staring at a computer all day, when you're actually out in nature and then think back to what you're doing in your business and say, actually, is this benefiting all of this and everybody that's here? I think that's super exciting. When is it specifically? Do you already have a date? What are you looking at?
Absolutely. So the retreat itself will be from Monday the 2nd to Friday the 6th of October.
Mhm.
But we're already starting with a 3-month online program to start to get to know each other, to already focus on inner development, have like a book club around regenerative books, start exploring the topic more high level. So then when we're on the retreat, we can really focus on diving deep and exploring exploring this mindset, this new lens. And we are not stuck on getting to know each other or the definition of regeneration or all the confusing elements or things that you need to sort of get a grip on first, like a certain basic level of systems thinking and all of that. So we already tackled that 3 months before, and then we'll dive deep in the first week of October.
It sounds super interesting, and I know we talked about technology and social media, but I would be super interested in having other people see what you're doing and many, many more retreats for the future as well. So looking forward to that, and stay tuned. We'll also leave more information about that in the comments if you're interested, of course. And before I let you go, Minou, I had an idea to give you a little bit of work, and ask you to create a speech for us. So this can be a short speech for us to close out, and I will already thank you from here to make sure that your kind of speech is the last thing people hear on today's podcast. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing your knowledge, and we need more people like you that are thinking beyond the status quo, beyond sustainability, which is important, but really move away from that tunnel vision. So, what is the exercise? So, imagine you're on stage. You
Mm-hmm.
have the opportunity to speak to an enormous audience of sustainability professionals and business leaders. You have the chance to make a very short speech that will inspire, motivate, and empower them to take action and make a change the very next day. what would your speech look like?
Yeah. Big question, this one. And it actually had a great bridge with what you just said about going beyond the status quo. So here we go. Before and even during the Middle Ages, many people believed that the earth was flat. When trains were just invented, people believed that women, and I'm not kidding, weren't built to sit on them because their uterus would fly out. And it wasn't until the mid-19th century that doctors realized that they should wash their hands before going to surgery. We as humans, we carry a whole lot of wisdom, but we also often, for quite long periods, believe in things that are in hindsight very silly. And I believe that growth-oriented capitalism at the expense of nature and the well-being of humans will, hopefully sooner than later, be added to this list of silly things that humans believed. And luckily, in John Elkington's words, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So ask yourself at the end of every day, did my decisions today power the transition to a drastically different and better future? Or will they prolong the status quo? Thank you, Laila. And thank you everyone for listening, and keep this question in mind.
Thank you, Minou. Thank you, everyone. Bye.